Hello, you're welcome to another episode of the Cake Experience. I'm Jifa. So, for us as a brand, we are constantly thinking about ways in which to create unique experiences for our clients, and that is the standard that we have set for ourselves. So, a couple of weeks ago, or a couple of months ago, to be quite honest, I got a call from one of my brides, and she said her sister was getting married, and I was like, okay. So they wanted to come in for a consultation. So she came in with her groom for a consultation, and her sister as well. So there were three of them that came here for the consultation, and the bride didn't really have any idea of what she wanted, and sometimes that is a good thing and a bad thing at the same time, because if the bride doesn't know what she wants, you have a unique opportunity to sort of create something very distinctive, especially if the bride has like her own style and her own personality, and the groom as well. But we all know weddings are about the bride, really, not necessarily about the groom. But anytime I have a groom in a consultation, I know it's going to be a good consultation, because most men who are concerned about how their cake is end up being more involved in the process and enjoy it more. So initially she was like, oh, she doesn't like flowers. She wants a white cake. And so I said, okay. We actually just started brainstorming about different ideas. And she said she likes glitz and glam. That was one of the things that she said that stood out to me. And so I said, okay, how about we do a lantern cake? And she said, what's that? So I sent her a picture of a lantern cake, and she was like, oh my god, I love it. And so I said, okay, so we can incorporate a lantern cake into the design that we do, so that it's not too repetitive, and it creates a very distinctive look overall. So the groom also decided that he wanted us to sort of play around with the arrangement of the cake. So the groom wanted us to sort of change up the arrangement of the tiers. We agreed that they didn't want their cake to be mechanical on its own. So the cake itself, they didn't want it to move in any way. And I said, okay, that's fine. So they also said, okay, sitting on a table by itself is also quite traditional. So they wouldn't mind the cake hanging. So I was like, okay, we can work with that. So the starting point was we got an orientation. We had the fact that we're going to do lanterns. And so I decided to do lanterns in the middle tiers, and then an isolated lantern on one. So we did 7 tiers of cake. So 3 tiers with a sandwich of a lantern for 2 of them, and then hang them. So I told them that once we had agreed on that, the design and the orientation, they left everything else to me. They said they wanted to have some sort of a surprise element in their cake, and that gets me so excited, because it's an opportunity as well for my technical support and I to just come up with something very different. And so they also said they didn't want something that we had ever done before. And I also think that as a creative, generally we learn by experience. And one of the things that I've come to realize over the years is that when we go for events, I don't know why, but it always seems like people, one, don't see the cake unless it's ridiculously big. Then they see it. But then it's like people don't realize just how delicate cake is. So realize that people are just like literally bumping into the cake and have no care that the cake can fall over. So I've always thought about having some sort of like an enclosure or some sort of like a fence around my cakes. Like literally, I've thought about it several times, because next to the cake hanging up in the ceiling so that nobody can touch it, you're always scared that someone is going to push the cake over. So then I thought about building an enclosure that was going to hang the cake, because I spoke to Let's Be Seated, and I realized that she was going to be flying her trusses. Now, the plus and the minus of that is that the cake could be worked into the ceiling decor, but that also affects her and I, because if her ceiling work is not completed on time, it affects my ability to hang my cake. And as much as it depends on me, I try to make sure that all the elements that I have control over, I make sure that I can control and manage to the best of my abilities. And so I don't usually like to be in a situation where I have to depend on a third party to do my job well, because anything can happen. And so that's why I decided to build a mechanism that could hang the cakes, and then that had some sort of like lighting incorporated, because I wanted it to be like the cake had its own sort of ecosystem. And then also, it was the general vibe I got from the couple when they came to the studio. Like, they have this sort of hidden language, like they may not be saying anything, but the looks that they give each other, it's like they are in their own world, and it's such a beautiful thing to watch. And so that sort of cocoon that people in love are in, like that was the inspiration behind building the enclosure that we did. Initially, my plan was to just have the enclosure there without any doors. But then the more I thought about it, I said there has to be some sort of an activation. There has to be a point where the cake has a moment. And so then I decided to build doors in the enclosure. And then I thought, okay, if we build doors and the place is enclosed, that means it will be dark. So we need to have a lighting system within. And then I thought, okay, if we have a lighting system within, it would be a cool thing to have a more immersive experience, because it's the whole concept of them being in their own world, and that sort of immersive experience is what I wanted to capture within the whole sort of structure. And so I called my good friend Kwesi of Mad Mappers, and I said, okay, is it possible for us to incorporate screens within our structure? He was like, yeah. So then I decided to do screens and mirrors to be able to sort of have that sort of reflective surface for the animation that was coming from the screens to reflect onto the mirrors, to create a 360 immersive experience for the couple. And so, yeah, so we did that. And then I called my welder and I showed him the structure, which is this one. This was my original sketch that I did. I showed it to him. He was like, okay, madam, we can do it. And I said, okay, can we do a door? He was like, oh, yeah, we can do a door. So initially my plan was to do like 2 straight doors like that. And then I thought about it. I was like, okay, the people sitting to the left and to the right will be blocked by the doors. So there should be a way for us to build a door that can close in on itself, so that we don't have like 2 panels moving apart, because then there's an extra sort of 5 feet here, 5 feet here, and the cake the structure was 10 feet. So then we would have ended up taking 20 feet of space. That's a lot of space, even though the Grand Arena is a huge event space. I don't think it's a good thing to waste space and to create a very disconnected sort of flow when it comes to an event space. So I thought if the doors close in on itself, it would be easier. And that, my friends, was the biggest challenge of all, because the structure, instead, if you look at this sketch, you can see that the structure was not round, it was oval. I didn't want it to be round because I wanted to have more space. And if I did it round, I wasn't going to have a lot of space laterally. So if the couple decided to cut the cake with their parents or their mothers, I wanted the capsule to be big enough for 4 people to stand in it comfortably and not feel sort of squashed together. And so that's why I designed it as an oval shape, like you can see, with the mirrors and the LEDs and the general sort of orientation. And now, because of how these things work, for me, from a design perspective, I thought it out, and I thought design-wise it was a feasible thing. But then the construction side and the metal work and the fabrication was where the challenges started to arise, because as a designer, you don't think through the fact that, okay, they have to build tracks for these doors. They have to sort of create a way for these doors to open and roll on themselves. And so the shape of the door has to be in such a way that when it moves, it can move and slot behind it. And so literally, my welder he's an incredibly talented guy. He told me initially that it was going to take him a week to build the structure. And at that point, he had never let me down on any of the jobs. I can give him really complicated designs and he just says, okay, madam, don't worry, I'll do it. So this time, 1 week passed, there was no news from him. The second week passed, there was no news from him. That is when I started to panic, because I was like, my guy, you are going to cause problems for me. And then he called and said, madam, I want to come and see you. So he came to the studio and he said, the blacksmiths in the whole of timber markets in Ghana cannot fabricate this door. I said, how? He said he's taking it from one person to another. And I'm like, how? And he's like, no, they said they can't, the shape is not correct. Like, they can't do it over. Round, they can do round, but they can't do over. And I was like, they have to, I'm not changing my design because it's difficult. That is what I want. So that is what I will get. And so he said, okay, madam, I'll see. So then he went back. So this structure that was initially supposed to take 1 week to fabricate ended up taking 2.5 weeks, and threads upon threads I had to make on my welder for him to bring this structure. At a point, he had to come and assemble it here. We changed my studio to a workshop and cleared the whole driveway, because the structure was 10 feet tall and 10 feet, like, it was huge. But then I realized that this was the week of the event too. So literally, he brought the structure to the studio Sunday. The event was the following Saturday. Sunday, he worked throughout the night. Monday, he hadn't finished. Tuesday, he continued. And then our consultant, who was working on the electric doors, because the mechanism had to open electric via a motor, and they had to be programmed. So he was a programmer who had to come and program the doors. And initially, I said to myself that, if we do a manual, it won't be nice. Like, it will be nice, like, it will be okay, but like, it won't be wow. So we decided to program this door. Another wahala, because already now the tracks are not tracking. The thing will open and the door will fly off into one corner. Literally, as of Wednesday, these people couldn't figure out this door. And I was like, and I know that, and the funny thing was that I knew that if I go to sleep, these people will leave this thing and go home. So we're all sitting here at all hours, like 3 a.m., 4 a.m., you hear the welder grinding, and then you see the sparks of the welding machine. And I was like, God, what will my neighbors say? Like, cause like for like 3 days straight, we're making noise and disturbing. Hey, it was not easy. Then the programmer too came, the doors too weren't programming. Hey! The doors said they won't program, they just won't program. So, as at Thursday, the thing was not working. Then somehow, I went upstairs and I prayed, Alpha Hour. I kid you not, I went upstairs and I prayed. I said, God, this disgrace cannot come. So please, let's help me. Hey, I came back down. The guy said they had done it. I said, how? He said, madam, it's working. They did it, it was working. Then we quickly called the sprayer. No, we called the carpenter to fix. So I went to buy wood for them to clad the door and the interior and everything. The carpenter too, another wahala. The thing is bolted, so we had to just make do. And then I decided to spray it so that the carpenter's mistakes will not show. But when I sprayed it, it made the situation worse. So Friday night, we knew our mechanism was working. Then we decided to move this thing to the venue. I called the truck driver. See, it took like 15 men to carry this thing. And if you see how tall this structure is on this tiny van, hey, literally, a lot of people sometimes ask me that, oh, but it's just cake. It is not cake. It is all these things, those stones that you see. The sleepless nights, the welders, the programmers, and all. Like, there's so many people behind the scenes that make what we do seem so simple. Like that. But when you look at like the behind the scenes, because you see, a lot of the times, us as cake makers or cake artists don't think in a technical way. But I've, over the years, realized that for us to give our clients an experience, you need to push yourself creatively, technically, to be able to incorporate different technologies and to create a very, like, because a cake cutting is a moment. It's like that, it's gone. Like, you won't get that back again. And so creating a moment that is sort of seared into people's minds that forever and ever they will remember this cake that was in a house, a self-contained house that had fog in it and all that. That is the goal with it. And I like to say thank you to DJ Viroski, who was a champion as always in playing a special song. So we had a special song that we had programmed everything to, so everything was sequenced. Kabute also, as usual, did his thing and introduced the cake beautifully, and the couple were happy. I mean, at the end of the day, that's my goal. There's so many people who say, "Oh, it's nice, it's not nice, it's whatever." It doesn't matter because at the end of the day, it is the couple, the people who the cake is for. It's their happiness that is the most important. If you on the sidelines decide that you make yourself judge and jury, that's fine. But my client was happy, and I was happy. My team was happy, and everybody was happy. So thank you for watching Cake Experience. See you next time. Bye.